Hey nerdy knitter, if you have a growing stash of leftover bits of yarn and you're not quite sure what to do with them, stash busting blankets are a great choice. You can use up all of those bits of yarn and have a really useful and beautiful thing for your home or a gift for somebody else. We're going to look at 10 patterns today that are perfect for using up leftover bits of yarn. Before we dive in, I just want to say, hey, I'm Tanya here at Nerdy Knitting. I'm a certified knitting instructor and a knitwear designer. My goal is to help you become a more confident, adventurous knitter. Be sure to stick around because I have some tips for keeping that stash organized. So when you find the perfect stash busting blanket pattern, you're ready to dive right in and cast on that new pattern. First is Nature's Palette by Purl Soho. Now this is one of those basic stitch patterns. It's just seed stitch, but you're holding the yarn double to create sort of a gradient effect. Now the same can be done with your leftover yarns to create different marls and gradients. Just lay out your leftovers and then sort them together and see which ones you think would be pretty held together. And then you'd really have a perfectly custom blanket. Then we have the Chevron Baby Blanket from Espace Tricot. The chevron pattern is created by working increases and decreases at set points, and it gives it that hills and valleys of the chevron shape. It's really simple to take the basic construction and just work it in stripes, using up your own scraps of yarn. Third is the Habitation Throw by Helen Stewart. Now the original pattern was created to use an Advent mini skein set. And with a mini skein, they're usually about 10 grams of yarn. So it would be very easy to dive into your leftover stash, create your own mini skein set, and knit up this simple garter and eyelet blanket. Now if you're looking for ideas for mini skein specifically, be sure you check out this video right here. Next, we have the Hue Shift Afghan by Kerin Dimeler. If you have lots of different colors in your stash, you could use them to create your own version of a Hue Shift Afghan. These are just mitered squares, but they're worked in specific color combinations. But that would be easy to customize the size and the colors for a really unique scrappy blanket. Now for something a little more interesting, take a look at the Run Rings Around by Woolly Thoughts. This is a really interesting construction of concentric circles, and it's really easy to customize the size. You pick up stitches and you're working in garter stitch, but you're alternating circles that go around and others that act as spokes. And each section, it would be very easy to switch out the yarn. Another classic stash buster is the 10 stitch blanket by Frankie Brown. Now this one starts with 10 stitches and you work it in a spiral shape, adding and changing yarn whenever you want, and you can make it as large or as small as you want. This is a really fun way to knit a scrap blanket. Then we have Bounce by Tin Can Knits. This is a really pretty baby blanket. It would certainly be easy to change the size. Each repeat of the simple lace pattern is separated by a small section of garter ridges. For a stash project, just use a different color from your stash for each lace section. Then we have Vivid, another pattern from Tin Can Knits. Now this one is another one that's easy to customize. You can choose any weight of yarn, make more or less squares to change the size, and each square is worked from the center out with a floral motif surrounded by garter stitch. Make each of the squares from your own stash of yarn and then seam them all together. Then we have the Vintage Afghan by Norah Gaughan for Barocco. Now this is 20 different large blocks with a variety of classic cable patterns. Each block is worked flat and then they're all seamed together. So this would be a great way to practice some classic cable patterns and use up your worsted weight leftovers. Then we have Give Me Strength by Good To Go Knits. Now this is a simple stitch pattern with an I-cord edging that's incorporated. You're holding two strands together. The original pattern used mini skeins, so it would be easy to go through your stash and come up with your own color combinations. And the pattern also includes advice for adjusting the size and varying the yarns used. For all my leftover yarns, I like to divide them a few different ways. First, I divide them by weight. I'll have a stash of fingering weight yarn, and then I sort of combine DK and sport weight. Then I have worsted and Aran, and then if I have any bulky, that's all by itself as well. Then I also divide them by fiber content. So all of my wool and animal-based yarns are in one stash, and all of my plant fiber yarns like cotton and linen are in another. That's basically because those different fibers have different needs. Wool and animal fibers, most of them need to be hand washed and treated really gently. Most plant fibers can be put in the washing machine, maybe even in the dryer. So I don't like to combine them, but I just divide them by animal and plant, and that's usually enough for a blanket. Now, if you have any pattern recommendations or some tips for keeping your leftover stash organized, I'd love to hear about them. So please leave me a comment down below. And if you're looking for more tips and patterns, then go check out those comments and see what everybody else is talking about. And if you're looking for even more scrap blanket patterns, check out this video right here.